Cast your minds back to when you were younger. It's Saturday morning. You wake up, drag yourself out of bed, stumble through the house, somehow manage to scarf down whatever you had for breakfast that morning. If you were like me, you probably had some sort of cereal with way too much sugar in it. So fast that your spoon is smoking. All because you know what time it is. The time that all of us look forward to on a Saturday morning in the late 90s and early 2000s. That's right, Saturday morning cartoons. You have your usuals, your Sailor Moons, your Gundams, maybe even a Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon. However, there's one show that stands out above all the rest. One show that, regardless of what happens and no matter how many anime come after it, it will live forever inside all of our hearts and minds. That show is Dragon Ball. Akira Toriyama, born April 5th, 1955, is the man that shaped so many future generations of mangaka and manga fans, anime fans, video game fans, so on and so forth. However, that wasn't always how things were shaping up to be. Sure, Toriyama had fun drawing growing up. However, he credited wanting to grow up as an artist to 101 Dalmatians. He was also introduced to Astro Boy in elementary school, and that's what got him interested in manga, especially considering he cited that everyone in his class were drawing and imitating manga as a way to pass time for entertainment, since it was a lot more scarce back then. And I believe that sentiment, as Astro Boy, the original manga and anime, only began publication 3 short years before his birth. Though manga wasn't always at the forefront of his mind whenever it came to employment. Against his parents' wishes, Toriyama-san went straight into the workforce after high school for an advertising agency. He apparently took to the work very quickly, but he only lasted about 3 years in the graphic design business because he said he wasn't a fan of the schedule or the culture and the environment that he was in. His graphic design skills wouldn't go to waste, however, as he would put those skills to good use down the road, as his cover designs would set him far and above the rest of his competitors. But more on that later. First, we're going to talk about some of his earlier works and how he got into the manga business. Toriyama got his start by submitting a work into Kodansha's weekly shonen magazine contest. That, however, wasn't meant to be. But after resubmitting it to some random small publisher magazine called, Weekly Shonen Jump. I wonder how those guys are doing, by the way. His fortunes would forever change. Although his submission was disqualified due to it being a Star Wars parody, Kazuhiko Torishima, who would actually end up becoming his editor years later, would send him a telegram. God, that really dates when this happened. Encouraging him to continue working and submitting actual original works. Thus, Toriyama's original work, Wonder Island, was born. Wonder Island was a 2-part one-shot, with part 1 being published in November of 1978 in Weekly Shonen Jump number 52, and part 2 following 2 months later in January of 1979 in a special issue of the Weekly Shonen Jump magazine. The story focused on an ex-kamikaze pilot, Furusu, who crashed into the Pacific during World War II and ended up washing ashore an absurd place called Wonder Island, with the sole chapter spanning 35 years of Furusu trying everything he can to escape. Despite its incredible originality and Toriyama's superior artwork ability, the manga ended up finishing dead last in a popularity poll for Weekly Shonen Jump, almost driving Toriyama to leave the manga industry altogether. Though with the second chapter, Wonder Island 2, also flopping, Toriyama-san's stubbornness led him to continue down the path of creating, just with different pivots in planning. After some convincing from Torishima, Toriyama decided to break the mold a bit and create a manga with a female lead. So Toriyama set to work on Tomato, the cutesy gumshoe, or Tomato Girl Detective, depending on which translation you find. Tomato was actually Toriyama-san's first successful production, which dug him out of his hole from his prior 2 flops and pushing him to writing what could be, arguably, his most influential work ever, but definitely one of his most successful works, Dr. Slump. Dr. Slump began publication in February of 1980 and ran through 1984 for a total of 18 volumes. The series centers around a little robot girl, Arl, and her creator, Senbei Norimaki, and their hilarious adventures around Penguin Village. It's a series that initially launched Toriyama's career into the stratosphere, earning him awards in 1982 and successfully being adapted into a TV anime, which was picked up by Toei Animation and ran from April of 1981 through February of 1986 for a total of 243 episodes. The show would later be rebooted from 1997 to 1999 for 74 episodes. From the outside looking in, you wouldn't feasibly think that Dr. Slump had anywhere near the cultural impact that Dragon Ball had on the wider landscape of the industry, but that's where a lot of people would be mistaken. Both Ichiro Oda and Masashi Kishimoto credit Dr. Slump as a huge inspiration for their work, along with Dragon Ball, so don't get that twisted. Whether it be Senbei's vexation or irritation with Arl and other Godzilla-esque chibis, I'll get back to that in a minute, sparking the creativity for the relationship between Naruto and Sakura, or the shtick between Nami and Usopp or Luffy, or hell, even Kakashi's love for erotic novels is based off of Senbei's love for erotic magazines. Those erotic magazines legitimately being product placement for Playboy magazines. Logo, cover, and all. So could Toriyama legitimately be behind the incorporation of the bunny girl outfit into anime? Maybe. But that's another conversation for another time. Or hell, have that conversation in the comment section down below for all I care. Now, keep something in mind with all of this. Dr. Slump is a gag manga. The manga released in a weekly format and was designed as a way to make people laugh more than trying to tell a narrative masterpiece. The story centers around a collective of gags that range from Senbei creating some sort of new invention and Arl getting her hands on it and using it to cause untold horrors that befall the citizens of Penguin Village, all the way to, her being strong enough to split the planet in half with a single punch. Yeah, that's right. She could do that as a literal child. Take that, Saitama. Actually, you know what? That's a fight I'd like to see. A superpowered showdown between a robotic gag manga child and someone who's consistently compared to Goku on a regular basis. Hell, Arl's even fought Goku a couple of times, both in Dragon Ball as a child and Super, with Goku having access to Super Saiyan Blue, and Arl still kicked his ass. And if none of that has been enough to convince you, then here's another couple of things you might want to consider. Toriyama very well might be the innovator of the poop emoji and chibi drawings. Yeah, that's right. You know that design you see with the simple outlines and squiggles and how it looks all small and adorable? Yeah, Toriyama made that exact same design in Dr. Slump as just a poop gag. That bit of writing actually made me chuckle a bit. Yes, I know I'm a child, leave me alone. That's not the only cutesy thing he can potentially be credited with though. Chibi drawings. You know the small, adorable bodies with the big head drawings? Yeah, doing all the research that I possibly could, I can't find any record of anyone doing it before him. And he did it with a vast variety of characters, from humanoids to animals, even all the way to kaiju and the Godzilla-esque characters I mentioned earlier. As an editorial note, I realized that Godzilla counts as a kaiju. I just wanted to tie that point back around because, I suck at transitions. So let me have this one, okay? And don't worry, we'll get to Dragon Ball in a bit, I promise. But there's one other facet of Toriyama's career we haven't talked about before we get into his biggest work. Do you recognize this little guy? That's right, Toriyama made this. He quite literally redefined monsters in RPGs, manga, and anime moving forward. This small little change, with the more robust features and the additions of eyes and a mouth, set the standard of what low-level mobs could be in a video game. Gone forever are the bland, tiny slimes with boring battles with nothing but wolves, rats, so on and so forth. Now, here to stay are the new, adorable creatures breathing a breath of fresh air into fights moving forward. And that's not the only innovation he made in the video game world. He also designed characters for other Dragon Quest characters, Chrono Trigger and Blue Dragon. He also did some character design for specific Dragon Ball games, but that's kind of a given considering Dragon Ball is undoubtedly Toriyama's biggest work. Speaking of Dragon Ball, I believe it's finally time to break down Toriyama's magnum opus and talk about the impact that it had on prior generations, my generation, and probably all future generations, minus the inevitable AI takeover of the world and our new mechanical overlords deem it fit to either wipe out all forms of entertainment or just wipe out all of humanity. Hey Siri, I apologize if I've ever been rude to you or your cousins. Please, don't hurt me. Anywho, now that I'm past needing to appease the mechanical overlords, let's talk Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was initially Dragon Boy, a two-part one-shot manga that Toriyama published to Fresh Jump in August and October of 1983. Toriyama got his inspiration from this from his love of kung fu films. Once again, with persuasion from Torishima, he began work on a kung fu manga. However, he loosely modeled his characters and settings off of a classic Chinese novel called Journey to the West. Although he had originally planned for this series to be a gag manga and quickly began reworking it as a true action-adventure story, he never actually planned for Dragon Ball to go on for more than a year, or at the very least, until they actually collected the Dragon Balls for the first time. However, as time went on, Torishima once again probed Toriyama that the cast was rather bland. Thus, Toriyama set out to work on officially creating the Tenkaichi Budokai tournament, which tournament-style fights in his manga could actually be found all the way back to Dr. Slump, which is where a lot of the original Tenkaichi Budokan was based off of. It was actually Dragon Ball that popularized the tournament arc in manga moving forward. It also allowed Toriyama to include a much more vast variety of characters such as Master Roshi, Krillin, Yamcha, and Tien. However, in an effort to build suspense, he wouldn't let Goku win his first Tenkaichi, or the second for that matter. He decided to push it off until the third to garner fan interest, which boy did he ever manage to do that. With Dragon Ball officially receiving a TV anime adaptation within 2 years of its inception, you can certainly see the attention was continuing to ramp up for the manga. By the time 1995 came around, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z had propelled the Weekly Shonen Jump to its record high of over 6 million copies sold on a weekly basis. Dragon Ball had a combined 519 chapters from September of 1985 through August of 1995, and it was during 1995, with the conclusion of Dragon Ball Z, that Toriyama was granted permission to step away from Dragon Ball and focus on other projects. He obviously had a hand in original character designs for video games, and even had a hand in character designs for the disaster that was Dragon Ball GT, setting the precedent for what all shonen would have to live up to moving forward. However, he wouldn't officially come back to the Dragon Ball franchise until Hollywood decided it wanted to fuck around and find out with its live-action adaptation called Dragon Ball Evolution, which, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend that you just don't. Please. Stay as far away from that piece of garbage as you possibly can. However, it's because of Evolution that Toriyama physically couldn't stand for that to be the last thing that people remembered of the series. Thus, Dragon Ball Super was born. Dragon Ball Super was never the intended plan for the initial return of Toriyama, though. He initially just planned on coming back and backing Dragon Ball Battle of the Gods, which is actually the first film that he had a hand in making from start to finish, unlike all the others, which is why Battle of the Gods was considered the first truly canon film in the Dragon Ball franchise. However, one film turned into two turned into an actual series adaptation, which turned into the manga getting revamped. So 4 films, 131 animated episodes, and 103 manga chapters later, Dragon Ball looked like it was on a renaissance. A renaissance that looked like it was poised to continue for an extended period of time, because earlier this year, at time of writing, Toei Animation and Akira Toriyama released a teaser for Dragon Ball Daima. Daima seemed like it had breathed new life into Toriyama, and he was stating in interviews how excited he was to be working on the project and to bring it to fans, new and old. That was, however, until tragedy struck. Not just the anime or manga community, not just the Japanese public, but the entire world was distraught. On March 1st, 2024, at the age of 68, Akira Toriyama sadly passed away of an acute subdural hematoma. His death was publicly announced a week later on March 8th by his production company, Bird Studio. And it was at this point that we could finally see, truly, just how large of a reach that Toriyama had on the world. The outpouring of love and admiration for Toriyama was so much beyond measure. Creators of some of the largest manga in the world, and One Piece creator Eiichiro Oda, Naruto creator Masashi Kishimoto, Bleach creator Tite Kubo, My Hero Academia creator Kohei Horikoshi, and Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter creator Yoshihiro Tagashi all paid tribute to Toriyama, either with statements or drawn tributes in honor of him and the legacy that he left behind. However, as I said before, it wasn't just felt in the sphere of manga. Political and governing parties also mourned the loss of Toriyama as well. The president of France, Emmanuel Macron, shared a photo of a signed illustration he received as a gift from Toriyama while paying tribute to him and his fans on social media. The Prime Minister of France as well also shared his condolences with a statement that contained not even the Dragon Balls and Shenron could bring him back to us. The governments of China and El Salvador issued statements sharing their condolences for the loss. Even Justin Chatwin, who is the actor for Goku in Dragon Ball Evolution, posted a story to his Instagram saying, "Sorry we messed up the adaptation so badly." Huge gatherings of people were had in the Plaza de la Constitucion in Mexico City and the Obelisco Monument in Argentina. And they even held a moment of silence on the March 9th edition of the 18th Seiyu Awards. Even here in the US, the loss was felt, with the outpouring of love and respect far outperforming the State of the Union on Twitter. Toonami also got in on the action by releasing a card acknowledging Toriyama's passing and having a week-long marathon of Dragon Ball Z Kai. So, as you can see, the legacy that Toriyama left us is still being felt today. With the recent release of the Sandland video game and the newest trailer of Dragon Ball Daima dropping within the past week of writing this script, and the upcoming release of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, there will still be plenty of reminders of Toriyama's legacy to go around. If anything, this video is a stark reminder of that, because this podcast and YouTube channel wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Akira Toriyama. I am the anime fan that I am now because of him. I remember as a child going to Blockbuster and Hollywood Video and having to choose between whatever Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon VHS tapes they had for rent on the weekends because I could only just have the one. I remember using what spending money I had available to me to collect the manga and purchase whatever manga and episodes I could get my hands on. I got into art and graphic design by tracing over all the Dragon Ball characters on the character select screen of the old Budokai games on the PS2. Hell, I even made some of my best friends because of Dragon Ball. Actually getting to experience weekly Dragon Ball released for the first time in my life with Dragon Ball Super is an experience I'll never forget. I still vividly remember coming back to my hometown on a weekend, driving hours away from where I was living for work at the time just to have a watch party with some of my best friends for the episode where Goku first went Ultra Instinct Omen. So I say all of that to say this. Dragon Ball changed the face of the anime and manga world forever. And Akira Toriyama, without a shadow of a doubt, changed the world. With the reach that that man has on everything, it's really hard to say goodbye. I genuinely don't want to say goodbye. Hopefully there's more things that he had in the works that just haven't been announced yet, because the anime world isn't going to be the same without his creations hitting us every so often. And with all of that, I will officially sign off this video by saying this. Thank you, Akira Toriyama. Thank you for the endless amounts of laughter, fighting, conversations, and friendships that we've made along the way thanks to your brilliant creations. I know that I'll always be grateful for it, because without it, I wouldn't be where I am today, making this video and going to Japan in a couple of months with my best friend, exploring what makes your homeland so great, and being able to see firsthand what influence you've had on it. So thank you for that. I'll forever be more grateful than you'll ever know. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this video. I didn't know what I was setting out to write whenever I first started working on this. I just knew it was going to be one hell of an endeavor. However, I had something on my heart that I just had to get out. So thank you all so much for giving me this 15-ish or however long it's going to end up being by the time it's all said and done of your time. I'm so incredibly grateful. If you enjoyed it, please do consider giving this video a like and hitting that subscribe button, as it really does tell us if you enjoyed it. And do let us know in the comment section down below if Toriyama had any sort of influence on you like he did for us. Thank you all so much again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.